Marcus Sterling cradled the newborn against his chest, his thumb stroking the infant's tiny fingers. Completely unaware, his wife stood frozen in the doorway. Sienna Hayes leaned into him, still wearing her hospital gown, her hand sliding possessively around his arm. "She has your eyes," Sienna whispered, and the intimacy in her voice, the ownership, the familiarity, made it clear this wasn't the first time she'd touched him like that. Marcus looked up, his face drained of color. Elena Morrison stood 15 feet away, perfectly still in her Armani suit, the one she'd worn to close a $40 million deal that morning. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't move. She just looked at them, at him, at the baby, at the woman claiming her husband, and in that silence, something fundamental shifted in the universe. Before we continue this story, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. And if you believe some betrayals deserve consequences, hit subscribe. You'll want to see where this goes. Trust me. Elena. Marcus said her name like a prayer, like a confession, like he was trying to wake himself from a nightmare. She raised one hand. Stop. That's all the gesture said. Just stop. Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the polished floor with the steady rhythm of a countdown. Elena, wait! Marcus thrust the baby at Sienna and stumbled forward. Please, just let me explain. Elena stopped but didn't turn around. When she spoke, her voice was so calm it raised the hair on his arms. There's nothing to explain, Marcus. You made your choice. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. Now she turned, and her eyes held something that terrified him more than anger ever could. Clarity. Absolute, unwavering clarity. And you know what? I'm not even surprised. She walked out of the hospital, out of his life, out of the marriage he'd destroyed without even realizing the foundation was crumbling. Marcus stood in that corridor, Sienna's voice asking questions behind him, the baby crying, nurses whispering, and felt something he'd never experienced in his successful, charmed, golden life. Fear. Real fear. Not of scandal or divorce or public embarrassment. Fear of something bigger. Something he couldn't name. Something that felt like standing on ice and hearing it crack beneath his feet. What Marcus Sterling didn't know, what he'd never bothered to ask, what he'd dismissed every time Elena tried to explain, was that everything he thought he owned, every asset, every contract, every building with his name on it, belonged to the woman who'd just walked away. And she'd built it that way on purpose. But you don't understand that kind of preparation without understanding where it comes from. You don't build that kind of protection unless you've learned, bone deep, that the only person who'll save you is yourself. Elena Morrison learned that lesson when she was 6 years old, standing in the kitchen of their Queens apartment, watching her mother's hands shake as she washed dishes that were already clean. Her father had left that morning. No warning, no explanation. Just gone, taking half their savings and leaving Patricia Morrison with a 6-year-old daughter and the 3rd-grade teacher's salary that barely covered rent. Patricia didn't cry, not where Elena could see. She just kept washing those dishes, her knuckles white around the sponge, and finally said, "Never make yourself small enough that a man can fit you into his life like a piece of furniture. You understand me, baby?" Elena didn't understand. Not then. She understood now. Money was tight growing up. Not desperate poor, but count every penny poor. Know the price of everything poor. Wear secondhand clothes and pretend they're vintage poor. Elena learned to calculate costs before she learned long division. She knew which bodega had day-old bread for half price, which neighbors would share dinner when things got really tight, which months they'd have to choose between heat and electricity. Her mother worked herself to exhaustion, left before dawn, came home after dark, graded papers at the kitchen table until midnight. "You're going to college," Patricia would say, "not like a hope, but like a law of physics. Full scholarship. You're too smart to waste." Elena was good with numbers, better than good. She understood patterns, systems, the way money moved and multiplied and disappeared. While other kids played with dolls, Elena played with her mother's checkbook, finding ways to stretch each paycheck further than Patricia thought possible. "How'd you do this?" her mother asked one night, staring at the budget Elena had drawn up, the carefully allocated columns that somehow left them with $50 extra at the end of the month. "You were paying too much for internet," Elena said. She was 12. "I called and threatened to switch providers. They cut the rate in half." Patricia laughed until she cried. Then she just cried. Then she pulled Elena close and whispered, "You're going to be somebody. You're going to be so much more than I ever was." "I'm going to take care of you," Elena promised. She kept that promise, got the scholarship to Columbia, full ride, majored in finance and economics, double minor in corporate law, worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, graduated summa cum laude at 21 with job offers from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan Chase. Turned them all down. "Are you insane?" her roommate shrieked. "Goldman offered you 6 figures." "To make other people rich," Elena said calmly. "I'd rather make myself rich." She took her savings, $30,000 earned from tutoring, bartending, and one very lucrative summer doing financial modeling for a hedge fund, and invested it in a logistics startup run by 2 MIT dropouts with brilliant ideas and catastrophic business plans. She restructured their entire operation, renegotiated vendor contracts, fixed their bleeding capital structure. 18 months later, they sold to Amazon for $12 million. Elena's share was small, $300,000, but it was real money. Seed money. Escape velocity. She did it again and again. By 25, she had equity in 3 companies. By 28, she had a reputation that made her phone ring constantly with people desperate for her to fix their broken businesses. That's when Marcus Sterling stumbled into her life. It was a venture capital summit in Manhattan. Marcus was on stage pitching an infrastructure development company with a vision that sounded revolutionary and financials that looked suicidal. Elena sat in the back, watching him work the crowd. He was magnetic. Tall, handsome, confident in that way that comes from privilege, from never having been told no, from believing the world exists to give you what you want. His smile could power cities. His handshake closed deals. His presentation made grown investors pull out their checkbooks. His balance sheet made Elena want to scream. After his pitch, while everyone else swarmed him with business cards and lunch invitations, Elena waited, watched him perform, watched him charm, watched him promise things his company couldn't possibly deliver. When the crowd finally dispersed, she approached. Marcus turned that megawatt smile on her. "Enjoy the presentation?" "Your financial modeling is garbage," Elena said. The smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "Your idea is solid. Your vision is compelling. Your projections are fantasy. You're 3/4 away from bankruptcy, and you're too arrogant to see it." Most men would have walked away. Most men would have gotten defensive, insulted, dismissive. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. The performance dropped. Real curiosity replaced it. "Then fix it," he said. "Why would I waste my time?" "Because you wouldn't have bothered telling me it's broken if you hadn't already figured out the solution." He leaned forward. "And because I'm smart enough to recognize someone smarter than me when she's standing right in front of me." It was a good answer. Maybe too good. But Elena heard the sincerity underneath the charm. Coffee, tomorrow morning. Bring your real financials, not the fiction you showed investors. Marcus laughed. That obvious? Always. They met at a cafe in Tribeca. Marcus brought a briefcase full of documents he clearly didn't want her to see. Elena spent 30 seconds on the first page and wanted to throw her coffee in his face. "You're not 3/4 from bankruptcy," she said. "You're 3 months, maybe 2. Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's not that bad." "It's worse. You're paying 30% over market rate on vendor contracts because you negotiated from desperation. Your debt structure is strangling you. Your operational costs are bleeding you dry, and your capital distribution is insane. You've given away too much equity to investors who contributed nothing but money. They believed in me when no one else would." "They saw a mark," Elena corrected, "and you were too grateful to see it." Marcus's face flushed. "So what? You came here to tell me I'm an idiot?" "I came here to tell you I can save your company, but it'll cost you." "How much?" 20% equity, final approval on all major financial decisions, and complete control over restructuring. Marcus stared at her. "That's a lot of power to hand someone I just met." "Then don't hand it to me," Elena said, standing. "File for bankruptcy in 8 weeks. I'm sure your investors will understand." She walked toward the door, got 3 steps. "Wait!" Marcus's voice stopped her. She turned. He was standing now, looking younger than he had on stage, looking scared and desperate and real. "Can you really fix it?" Elena studied his face, saw intelligence behind the charm, saw hunger that matched her own, saw someone who might actually listen. "Yes." "Then do it." They shook hands. Elena felt something shift. Not love. Recognition. The sense of meeting someone who operated at her frequency, who understood that success required more than charisma. She spent 3 months rebuilding his company from the foundation up, fired half his executive team, renegotiated every contract, restructured the entire debt load, and created something Marcus never bothered to understand. A corporate architecture so complex, so carefully layered, that only 3 people on Earth fully grasped it. Elena, her lawyer, David Chen, and the company auditor, Mr. Harrison. "Why so many holding companies?" Marcus asked one night, signing documents without reading them. "Protection," Elena said. "The more layers between you and liability, the safer you are." "You think I'll screw up?" "I think everyone screws up eventually. I'm building a system that survives your mistakes." Marcus laughed. "That's the most cynical thing I've ever heard." "That's the most realistic thing you'll ever hear." He signed everything, trusted completely. Never asked the one question that might have changed everything. Who actually owns what? The answer was simple. Elena owned 95% of the controlling interest, distributed across holding companies and trusts, so carefully structured that even forensic accountants would need months to map it. Marcus owned 5%, and a title that sounded impressive, but meant nothing without her approval. She'd built it that way, intentionally. Not from distrust, but from experience. From watching her mother lose everything to a man who walked away. From understanding that love and business were separate things, and mixing them without protection was how women ended up with nothing. The company exploded. Within a year, they had 3 major government contracts. Within 2 years, they'd expanded into 6 states. Within 3 years, Marcus Sterling was on magazine covers, on CNBC, on stages at TED Talks, being celebrated as a visionary, a genius, a self-made billionaire. Self-made. The phrase made Elena laugh every time she heard it. She stood backstage during his speeches, answering emails, managing the empire while he took the applause. People would ask sometimes, "Who's that woman always in the background?" My secret weapon, Marcus would say, smiling. The genius who makes it all work. And it was true. All of it. But what Marcus never grasped, what he never bothered to verify, was exactly how much of it all Elena actually controlled. When he proposed, it surprised no one. They'd been spending 18-hour days together, finishing each other's sentences, developing a partnership that looked perfect from the outside. The wedding was small, elegant. Patricia cried in the front row, watching her daughter marry a man who seemed to value her mind as much as her beauty. I promise, Marcus said during the vows, his voice steady and sure, to honor you, to respect you, to build our life together as partners in everything. Elena believed him. That was her mistake. The change started small, so small she almost missed it. Marcus began making decisions without telling her, hiring executives, approving campaigns, signing leases. You trust me, right? He'd say when she questioned him. Of course. Then relax. I've got this. I've got this became his mantra. The thing he said to end conversations, to shut down her questions, to make decisions without her input. Elena told herself it was natural. The company was growing. They couldn't both micromanage everything. Division of labor made sense, except the division kept shifting. Marcus started handling strategy, then finance, then everything she'd once controlled. She'd discover major decisions after they were made, learn about new initiatives from press releases, find out about executive changes from LinkedIn. We need to communicate better, she said one night over dinner. Marcus didn't look up from his phone. About what? You hired a new CFO without telling me. He's operational. That's my domain. Our domain, Elena corrected. We're partners. Now Marcus looked up, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. Irritation. Impatience. Like she was being difficult. Elena, I appreciate everything you've done, but the company has evolved. I need to move fast. I can't run every decision past you for approval. I'm not asking for approval. I'm asking for information, and you'll get it, for the big stuff. He smiled, and it looked almost genuine. But day-to-day operations? That's on me. You said yourself you wanted to stay behind the scenes. Behind the scenes doesn't mean invisible. Marcus sighed, the kind of sigh that said he was being patient with her, that she was being unreasonable. You're overthinking this. Everything's fine. The company's thriving. Just trust me. There it was again. Trust me. Like trust was a substitute for partnership. Like faith was the same as respect. Elena let it go. And the next time. And the time after that. Because she loved him. Because marriage required compromise. Because maybe she was overthinking. But she started paying attention. At social events, people addressed Marcus exclusively. Mr. Sterling, brilliant move on the Chicago deal. Mr. Sterling, loved your interview. Mr. Sterling, you're changing the world. And Marcus, instead of saying we or acknowledging Elena, would simply smile and say, thank you. At a charity gala, an investor's wife took Elena's hand. You're so lucky. Your husband is an absolute genius. Elena smiled politely. We've built something special together. The woman laughed. Oh, of course. Behind every great man, right? But still, you must be so proud of him. That night, driving home, Elena said quietly, that was uncomfortable. What was? Marcus was scrolling through his phone. Being treated like your accessory instead of your partner. Marcus glanced at her. You're being sensitive. People are just being polite. Polite would be acknowledging I exist. Elena. His tone had an edge now. Don't do this. Don't make tonight about your ego. The words hit like a physical blow. My ego? You know what I mean. Softer now, probably hearing how it sounded. You're so confident, so self-assured. Don't let other people's ignorance bother you. You and I know the truth. Isn't that enough? And there it was, the subtle shift, the suggestion that wanting recognition was vanity, that expecting partnership was insecurity, that she should be satisfied with his private acknowledgement while he accepted public credit. Elena said nothing the rest of the drive. When they got home, Marcus kissed her forehead and went to bed. She stood in their kitchen, marble counters, designer appliances, all the markers of success, and felt completely alone. She went to her study and pulled out documents she hadn't reviewed in months. The corporate structure, the ownership breakdown, the trusts and holding companies and protections she'd built years ago. 95%. She controlled 95% of everything. Marcus had 5% and a title that sounded important but meant nothing. He'd signed every document, read none of them, trusted completely. And now he was acting like he owned it all, like she was lucky to be married to him instead of the other way around, like her contributions were footnotes instead of the foundation. Elena wasn't angry yet, just alert, watching, waiting to see if this was temporary or permanent, waiting to see if the man she married would remember who she was. She gave him time, months, a year. He didn't remember. He forgot more with each passing day. His schedule became unpredictable. Late meetings, business trips, phone calls taken in the car, voice lowered when she entered the room. "How was your day?" she'd ask. Busy, productive, exhausting. Never details, never stories, never shared space. Their home felt curated, silent, polished, empty. At events, people bypassed her entirely. Young women watched Marcus with open admiration, their smiles lingering, and Marcus noticed. Worse, he leaned into it. Compliments fed something in him. Attention affirmed something he'd started to believe, that he was self-made, self-sufficient, untouchable. At a private dinner with investors, a partner raised concerns about long-term risk. Elena began to respond. She'd run the models, understood the exposure. Marcus cut her off. "I've already considered that. We're moving forward." Elena stopped mid-sentence. Not because she lacked an answer, because she understood the message. That night, she addressed it. "You interrupted me." Marcus shrugged, loosening this tie. "I didn't want to confuse them. Too many voices weaken authority." Her chest tightened. "And when did my voice become a liability?" He sighed, tired, like she was exhausting him. "You're reading too much into it. You wanted to step back, remember?" She remembered. What she didn't remember was agreeing to disappear. She didn't fight him. She'd learned something about men like Marcus. Confrontation at the wrong moment only hardened resistance. Instead, she observed. She noticed how he justified absences before she asked, how he grew irritated by small things, how affection became mechanical, obligatory, cold. One night, after another late return, she asked softly, "Is there something you want to tell me?" Marcus froze, just for a second, then laughed. "Tell you what? You've been distant lately. Maybe you're hiding something." The accusation stunned her. Not because it hurt, because it revealed everything. Deflection, projection, guilt. She realized then that Marcus no longer saw her as a partner. He saw her as furniture, reliable, unmoving, permanent. There when he needed her, invisible when he didn't. That illusion gave him courage. At the office, rumors started. Nothing explicit, just whispers about a young woman often seen near his private elevator. a consultant whose role no one could define. Her name was Sienna Hayes. Elena heard the whispers, didn't investigate, didn't confront, didn't panic. Because she'd learned something in business and in life. When someone is determined to betray you, interruption only delays the truth. Better to let them reveal themselves completely. Better to wait until the pattern becomes undeniable. What hurt wasn't the possibility of another woman. It was the certainty that Marcus no longer feared losing her. He believed she was too invested, too quiet, too dependent, too unaware. He was wrong on every count. But men who feel invincible rarely see danger until the ground opens beneath them. Elena's silence became intentional. She stopped asking questions, stopped waiting up, stopped adjusting her schedule to his. She reclaimed her mornings, her routines, her clarity. And it unsettled him. "You've changed," Marcus said one evening, watching her read while he paced. She looked up. "So have you." "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." The distance between them grew, not explosive, surgical, clean, precise. At events, she smiled. At home, she withdrew. And Marcus interpreted her composure as indifference. He mistook her restraint for resignation. That was his final miscalculation. Because while he pursued validation elsewhere, Elena was detaching. Not from bitterness, from preparation. She was mourning the man she'd married while studying the man he'd become. And the man he'd become was careless. Careless with loyalty, careless with truth, careless with power he didn't understand. When he stopped seeing her as someone who could leave, he gave her something priceless. Freedom. Her name was Sienna Hayes. Elena heard it long before she saw her. The name floated through conversations like cheap perfume. A junior consultant, a brand liaison, someone useful to Marcus's expanding public image. Sienna was 28, ambitious, beautiful in that effortless way youth provides. She'd grown up admiring men like Marcus from a distance, reading their interviews, memorizing their success stories. To her, Marcus wasn't just a man. He was an achievement. When Marcus first noticed her, it wasn't love, it was attention. She laughed at his jokes with genuine awe. She listened like every word was scripture. She asked questions that made him feel brilliant instead of challenged. She looked at him like he was extraordinary. That look had become rare at home. Sienna entered his orbit quietly. Professional meetings that ran long. Brainstorming sessions after hours. Dinners that happened naturally when time slipped away. Marcus told himself stories. "I deserve this. It's harmless. I'm not doing anything wrong." What he didn't admit was that he was drawn not to Sienna, but to how she made him feel about himself. Elena noticed the shift before anything physical happened. It was in the way Marcus mentioned Sienna's name casually, testing the sound of it. In how he defended her competence when no one had questioned it. "She's sharp," he said once over dinner. "Reminds me of how driven you used to be." The comparison cut deeper than any insult. Elena smiled. "I'm glad you have good people around you." What she didn't say was that she recognized the pattern. Admiration evolving into dependence. The early stages of something that would destroy everything. At a corporate gala in Boston, Elena saw Sienna for the first time. She stood near Marcus, not touching him, not claiming him, but positioned close enough to signal relevance. Her dress was tasteful but deliberate. Her laughter timed. Her eyes followed him constantly. Sienna noticed Elena. Their eyes met across the room. Recognition passed between them. Not of each other, of roles, of territory. Sienna looked away first. Elena understood. This wasn't accident. This was a woman who knew exactly where she stood and exactly where she wanted to be. Driving home that night, Elena said calmly, "Your consultant seems very attached." Marcus stiffened. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" "She's ambitious. Don't start seeing threats where none exist." "Threats?" The word settled between them. "Interesting choice." Amara didn't argue. She leaned back and watched city lights blur past, patterns forming inevitability. From that moment, the triangle solidified. Sienna became bolder, messages more frequent, tone more personal. She learned Marcus's schedule, his moods, his weaknesses. She praised when the press criticized, supported when deals failed, offered sympathy where Elena offered silence. To Sienna, silence looked like absence. She mistook dignity for disinterest. One evening, after a brutal board meeting, Marcus didn't come home. His phone went unanswered, his location unknown. Elena didn't call. She made tea, sat in her study, reviewed documents she hadn't touched in months. She knew. Not from proof, from pattern. Betrayal always announces itself through behavior before evidence. Marcus returned the next morning, tired, distracted. "Fell asleep at the office." Elena nodded. "You should take better care of yourself." No accusation, no suspicion. That unsettled him more than anger ever could. From that point, Marcus compartmentalized his life. Home became obligation. Sienna became validation. He told himself he deserved happiness, that Elena was too controlled, too distant, too composed. What he refused to admit was that he'd changed the terms, then blamed his wife for not adapting. Sienna, meanwhile, began imagining permanence. Pictured herself beside him at events, in headlines, in houses that smelled like money. She didn't know about Elena's ownership, didn't ask about legalities, didn't care about structure. She cared about outcome. When she discovered she was pregnant, fear briefly eclipsed ambition. Marcus's reaction wasn't joy. It was panic. "This can't happen. You don't understand what's at stake." Sienna's voice shook. "You said you cared about me." "I do, but this complicates everything." She looked at him, really looked, and realized something painful. She wasn't the plan. She was the risk. Still, the child existed. Reality couldn't be undone. Marcus promised discretion, support, distance. Sienna agreed outwardly, but inwardly something hardened. She would not be erased. Elena learned about the pregnancy from Dr. Rachel Kim, her personal physician who also happened to work at the private clinic where wealthy people handled delicate situations. "Madam," Dr. Kim said carefully over the phone, "there's been a delivery. I thought you should know." Elena closed her eyes, breathed. "Thank you, Rachel." She hung up, sat perfectly still. So it had happened. Not rumor, not suspicion. A child. For a moment, memories flooded. Her wedding day, Marcus's promises, the plans they'd whispered at night about children, legacy, continuity. Now that future existed, just not with her. What surprised Elena wasn't the pain. She'd felt that coming for weeks. What surprised her was the calm. She dressed slowly that morning. Neutral colors, flat shoes, no jewelry. She didn't cry, didn't rehearse confrontations, didn't plan scenes. She simply drove to the hospital. The corridor smelled like antiseptic and new life. Nurses moved with practiced softness. Elena walked with steady steps. Then she saw them. Marcus, holding a newborn wrapped in pale fabric. His posture stiff, his expression torn between awe and terror. Sienna beside him, exhausted from birth, her hand resting on his arm with unmistakable possession. The baby's tiny face, peaceful and oblivious. The moment froze. Marcus looked up. Color drained from his face. Elena. She raised her hand. Stop. She took in the scene with clinical clarity. The baby's breath. Sienna's quiet triumph masked as vulnerability. Marcus's fear. And in that instant, Elena understood something fundamental. This wasn't about her marriage anymore. This was about responsibility, about consequence, about clarity. She felt no urge to scream, no desire to compete with a woman who'd just given birth. She nodded once. Acknowledgement without forgiveness. Then she turned and walked away. "Amara, please!" Marcus called, shifting the baby awkwardly. "Let me explain!" She stopped walking, but didn't face him. "There's nothing to explain. You made your choice." Sienna watched, confused by the absence of confrontation. She'd prepared for anger, tears, accusations. What she saw instead unsettled her. Silence. Control. Power. Elena left the hospital. Outside, sunlight felt too bright for a day that altered everything. Marcus chased her, nearly tripping on the steps. "Where are you going? We need to talk." Elena turned, finally meeting his eyes. "You needed to talk before. Now you need to take care of your child." Her voice held no bitterness. That frightened him more than rage ever could. She got in her car and drove away, leaving Marcus standing on the steps, holding the consequences of his choices, finally understanding that the woman he'd dismissed, the woman he'd taken for granted, the woman he'd believed would always be there, she was gone, and she was taking everything with her. Elena drove home in silence, not to the penthouse she'd shared with Marcus, to a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights she'd purchased 3 years ago under an LLC Marcus knew nothing about. She'd bought it the same week he'd interrupted her in that investor meeting. The same week she'd realized their partnership was becoming performance. The house was empty, clean, hers. She set her keys on the entry table, walked to the study, and opened her laptop. One email. Subject line: Activation Protocol. She typed 3 words. Begin the process. Sent. Then she poured herself a glass of water, sat in the quiet, and waited for her world to catch fire. At the hospital, Marcus stood in Sienna's room, the baby finally asleep in the clear plastic bassinet. Sienna watched him from the bed, exhausted and wary. "What did she say?" Sienna asked. Marcus didn't answer. Couldn't, because Elena hadn't said anything that made sense. No screaming, no threats, no demands. Just that terrible calm, that absolute certainty, that walking away like she'd already decided everything that mattered. "Marcus," Sienna's voice sharpened. "What did your wife say?" "She said I made my choice." The words tasted like ash. "Good." Sienna sat up straighter, wincing. "Then we can move forward, figure this out, be a family." Marcus looked at her, really looked. Saw a 28-year-old woman who'd just given birth to his child, who was looking at him like he was supposed to have answers, supposed to fix everything, supposed to make this make sense. "I need to go," he said. "Go where?" "Home. The office. I don't know." He grabbed his jacket. "I need to think." "You need to be here," Sienna's voice cracked. "With us. With your daughter." Marcus stopped at the door. "I'll come back tomorrow. I promise." He left before she could respond. Drove aimlessly through Manhattan, his phone buzzing constantly. Texts from Sienna. Calls from the office. Messages from colleagues who'd somehow already heard rumors. He ignored them all and called Elena. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same thing. Tried a third time. This time, she answered. Yes? Her voice was so calm, it raised every hair on his body. Elena, please. We need to talk. We're talking. In person, please. Just give me a chance to explain. Silence stretched. Then, there's nothing to explain, Marcus. You wanted something different. You got it. Congratulations. I made a mistake, he said, hearing the desperation in his own voice. A massive, terrible mistake. But we can fix this. We can work through this. No, Elena said simply. We can't. Elena, I'm hanging up now. Don't call again. The line went dead. Marcus pulled over, hands shaking on the steering wheel. He sat there for 20 minutes, trying to understand what had just happened, why Elena wasn't fighting, why she wasn't demanding explanations or apologies or promises, why she was so calm. His phone rang. Not Elena. Robert Chen, the company's general counsel. Marcus, we need to talk. Now. Not a good time, Robert. Make time. There's been a development. Something in Robert's tone made Marcus's stomach drop. What kind of development? The kind we should discuss in person. How soon can you get to the office? Marcus checked his watch. Nearly 10 p.m. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He drove to the office tower, rode the elevator to the executive floor. Robert was waiting in the conference room, surrounded by documents, looking like he hadn't slept in days. What's going on? Marcus asked. Robert slid a folder across the table. I got a notification this afternoon, from Elena's attorneys. Marcus's chest tightened. Divorce papers already? Not exactly. Robert opened the folder. It's a formal notice of governance review. She's invoking clauses in the corporate charter that haven't been used in years. What clauses? Robert looked at him with something close to pity. The ones that give her final approval on all major expenditures, all executive appointments, all strategic initiatives. Marcus laughed. It sounded hollow, even to his own ears. That's ridiculous. Those are legacy clauses from when we were starting out. They don't apply anymore. They absolutely apply, Robert said quietly. Marcus, when was the last time you actually reviewed the corporate structure? I don't need to review it. I know what I own. Robert pushed another document forward. Do you? Marcus looked down. Ownership breakdown, holding companies, trusts, layered entities with names he vaguely recognized but had never bothered to investigate. And there, in black and white, impossible to misunderstand. Elena Morrison Sterling, beneficial owner, 95% voting control. The room tilted. This can't be right. It's absolutely right, Robert said. I've spent the last 6 hours verifying it with 3 different auditors. Elena structured the company this way at inception. You signed off on everything. I would never have agreed to this. You did agree. Multiple times. You just didn't read what you were signing. Marcus stood up, paced to the window, stared down at the city lights. So what does this mean? Practically. Practically? Robert's voice was grim. It means Elena can freeze operations whenever she wants. She can block expenditures. She can veto executive decisions. She can call a shareholder meeting and restructure the entire company. And there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop her. She wouldn't. But even as Marcus said it, he knew it was a lie. The woman who'd walked away from him in that hospital corridor, the woman who'd said, "You made your choice," with that devastating calm, she would do exactly what she needed to do. She already has, Robert said. As of this afternoon, all credit lines require her dual approval. All contracts over $50,000 need her signature. All board decisions need her review. Marcus turned. She's shutting me out. She's removing the foundation, Robert corrected, and watching to see what collapses. Marcus slumped into a chair. For the first time in his adult life, he had no idea what to do. No charm to deploy, no confidence to fake, no solution to engineer. "Can we fight this?" he asked weakly. Robert shook his head. "Fight what? Her ownership? It's completely legitimate. Her right to enforce governance? It's written into every document you signed. Marcus, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. When you married Elena, did you ever actually understand how the company was structured?" The answer was no. He'd trusted her completely. Let her handle all the boring legal and financial details, while he focused on vision and execution and being the face of success. He'd mistaken her competence for subservience, her support for surrender, her silence for acceptance. "I thought we were partners," Marcus said quietly. "You were," Robert replied, "until you forgot she was the one holding the foundation." Marcus went home around 3 a.m. The penthouse felt cavernous, empty. Elena's study door was open. He walked in, turned on the light. Her desk was clear, completely clear. No papers, no files, no evidence she'd ever worked there. The bookshelves that had held her business texts and legal references, empty. She'd erased herself from this space so thoroughly it was like she'd never existed. Marcus sat at her desk, open drawers, all empty except one. Inside, a single envelope with his name written in her precise handwriting. His hand shook as he opened it. The letter was short, 2 paragraphs. "Marcus, I built this company to last beyond mistakes, beyond ego, beyond any one person's failures. I built protections not because I didn't trust you, but because I understood that power changes people. I've watched it change you. I've watched you forget who we were, who I am, what we built together. I gave you time to remember. You chose to forget faster. The structures I created will remain in place. The company will survive. Whether your role in it survives depends entirely on choices you make from this point forward. I don't hate you. I don't even blame you, not entirely, but I won't participate in my own erasure. Consider this my resignation from the position of being underestimated. Elena." Marcus read it 3 times. Then he sat in her empty study and finally let himself cry. Not for his marriage, for his arrogance, for believing he could take without giving, for thinking partnership meant she would always be there, always be silent, always be willing to disappear when convenient. At 7 a.m., his phone rang. Sienna. "Where are you?" she demanded. "You said you'd be back." "I got caught up." "With what? Your wife who left you?" The bitterness in Sienna's voice cut through his exhaustion. "Sienna, I need time to think." "Time to think? I just had your baby. I'm alone in this hospital room with your daughter, and you need time to think?" "I'll be there soon." "Don't bother." Sienna hung up. Marcus stared at his phone. 2 women, both angry, both justified, both suffering because of choices he'd made, while telling himself he was just pursuing happiness, just taking what he deserved, just being human. He'd destroyed his marriage, complicated Sienna's life, created a child who would grow up in chaos. And for what? Because he'd liked how Sienna looked at him? Because Elena had challenged him instead of worshipped him? Because success had made him believe he deserved everything? His phone rang again. Not Sienna. His CFO, Daniel Park. "Marcus, we have a problem." "What now?" "The quarterly projections I sent you last week? The ones you approved?" "What about them?" "They just got kicked back. By Mrs. Sterling. She says the numbers don't align with sustainable growth parameters, and she's blocking the expansion until we revise." Marcus rubbed his face. "Can she do that?" "According to legal, yes. She has final approval on strategic initiatives." "Then revise the damn numbers." "It's not that simple. Daniel said. She's questioning our entire growth model. She wants a meeting to review everything from capital allocation to operational efficiency to executive compensation. Executive compensation? Marcus's voice rose. She's going after salaries? She's going after everything, Daniel said quietly. Marcus, what's going on? People are asking questions. The board is confused. Investors are getting nervous. Tell them everything's fine. Is it? Marcus didn't answer because he had no answer. Fine was a country he'd left behind the moment he decided his wife's silence meant permission instead of patience. Over the next week, Elena systematically dismantled the illusion of his control. She didn't attack. She didn't retaliate. She simply activated the structures she'd built years ago. The safeguards Marcus had signed without reading. The protections he'd dismissed as unnecessary paranoia. Credit lines froze pending dual approval. Contracts stalled in review. Board meetings got postponed for governance alignment. Vendors started calling, confused about delayed payments. Executives whispered in hallways. And through it all, Elena remained invisible. She didn't come to the office, didn't attend meetings, didn't issue statements. She just pulled strings from wherever she was, watching the machines slow down, watching Marcus scramble, watching the company he thought he owned respond to her authority instead of his. Marcus tried everything, called her repeatedly, sent emails, showed up at their penthouse only to find the locks changed. Contacted her mother, who listened politely and said, "My daughter doesn't make decisions lightly. If she stepped away, it means you gave her no choice." He tried going through David Chen, Elena's longtime attorney. David took his call, listened to 5 minutes of desperate explanation, and said simply, "Mr. Sterling, my client's instructions are clear. All communication goes through official channels. If you'd like to discuss corporate governance, submit a formal request." "I don't want to discuss corporate governance," Marcus said. "I want to talk to my wife." "Then you should have thought of that before you had a child with another woman," David replied, and hung up. Sienna, meanwhile, grew increasingly bitter. She'd been discharged from the hospital and was staying in the apartment Marcus had rented for her. A 2-bedroom in Murray Hill that felt less like a home and more like a waiting room. "When are you going to tell people?" she asked during one of his visits. "Tell them what?" "About us, about the baby, about our family." Marcus looked at his daughter sleeping in Sienna's arms and felt a complicated knot of love and regret. "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple," Sienna said. "You're either committed to us or you're not." "I am committed." "Then prove it. Leave her officially. File for divorce. Move in here. Be a father to your child instead of a visitor." "I'm trying to fix the situation at work first." Sienna's laugh was sharp. "You mean you're trying to get your company back from your wife?" "It's not her company. It's our company." "Is it?" Sienna shifted the baby to her shoulder. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like it was always her company." "You were just the face she let everyone see." The accuracy of that statement stung worse than anything Elena had said. Marcus left without answering, drove to the office, sat in his executive suite that suddenly felt less like a throne and more like a stage set. His assistant knocked. "Mr. Sterling? Mr. Harrison is here. Says it's urgent." Mr. Harrison, the company's auditor. The man who'd worked with Elena from the beginning, who understood the corporate structure better than anyone. "Send him in." Harrison entered, carrying a briefcase that looked heavy. He was in his 60s, meticulous, loyal to process rather than people. "Mr. Sterling," Harrison said, sitting without waiting for invitation, "we need to discuss the upcoming board meeting." "What about it?" "Mrs. Sterling has called for a formal review of operational authority. She'll be attending, and she'll be presenting." Marcus's blood went cold. Presenting what? Her findings. regarding corporate governance, fiduciary responsibility, and structural sustainability. In English, Harrison. Harrison met his eyes. She's going to show the board exactly who owns what and who's been making decisions without proper authority. She's going to demonstrate that the company's recent trajectory has been operationally sound, but governance negligent. And she's going to propose a restructuring that limits your unilateral decision-making power. She's removing me. She's redefining your role, Harrison corrected, from primary authority to operational contributor. Marcus stood up, paced to the window. Below, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. Can she do this? She already has done this, Harrison said. The board meeting is just formality. She owns 95%. She has absolute authority. The only question is how you respond. I could fight. You'd lose, and you'd destroy what's left of your reputation in the process. Marcus turned. What would you do if you were me? Harrison considered the question seriously. I'd accept reality. I'd acknowledge what I took for granted. I've asked myself if holding on to pride is worth losing everything else. That's what she wants, for me to just surrender. No, Harrison said quietly. That's what you wanted from her, and she refused. Now she's asking if you're capable of the same humility you expected from her all along. After Harrison left, Marcus sat in his office until dark. His phone buzzed. Text from Sienna. She's crying. Where are you? Another text from Daniel. Board meeting confirmed for Friday. Are you prepared? Another from a journalist. Hearing rumors of executive changes at Sterling Infrastructure. Care to comment? Marcus turned off his phone, sat in silence, and finally understood what Elena had been trying to tell him all along. Power wasn't about being seen, it was about being essential, and he'd spent years being visible while she'd been essential. Now visibility meant nothing, and essential had walked away, taking the foundation with her. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. Marcus arrived early, expecting to find Elena already there, to maybe catch a moment alone, to attempt one more conversation. She wasn't there. Not at 9:30. Not at 9:45. Not at 9:55. The board members filed in, uncomfortable, whispering. Everyone knew something had shifted. No one knew exactly what. At 10 a.m. precisely, the conference room door opened. Elena walked in. Marcus's breath caught. She looked different, not diminished by their separation, sharpened. She wore a navy suit he'd never seen, carried a leather portfolio, moved with absolute confidence. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him at all, just took a seat at the head of the table, the seat he usually occupied, and opened her portfolio. "Good morning," she said calmly. "Thank you all for attending. I know this meeting was called on short notice, but, given recent events, clarity seemed necessary." David Chen, her attorney, sat beside her, Mr. Harrison on her other side. Marcus suddenly felt outnumbered in his own conference room. "Before we begin," Elena continued, "I want to be clear about something. This is not personal. This is not revenge. This is business. The business of ensuring this company survives beyond any individual ego or mistake." She pressed a button. A screen lit up behind her. Corporate structure, ownership breakdown. The same documents Marcus had seen in Robert's office, now projected for everyone to see. Gasps around the table. Board members leaning forward, studying the numbers, understanding dawning on their faces. "As you can see," Elena said, her voice steady, "I hold 95% voting control of this organization. This structure was established at the company's inception and has remained unchanged for 10 years. It's completely legal, completely documented, and completely enforceable." One of the board members, Catherine Walsh, spoke up. "Mrs. Sterling, I don't understand. Why are we only learning this now? Because I chose not to exercise this authority until it became necessary, Elena replied. I believed in partnership. I believed in collaborative decision-making. I believed that structure should serve the work, not replace it. She paused, and for the first time, her eyes flickered to Marcus. Just for a second. But in that second, he saw everything. The disappointment, the resolve, the finality. I no longer believe those things are possible, Elena continued. Not under the current operational model. So I'm proposing changes. The presentation continued. Detailed analysis of company operations. Financial performance versus governance compliance. Risk assessment. Structural vulnerabilities. Elena had spent the last 2 weeks compiling evidence of every decision Marcus had made without proper oversight. Every contract signed hastily. Every expenditure approved without review. Every risk taken without consultation. Nothing illegal, nothing criminal. Just pattern after pattern of one man believing he could operate without accountability. My proposal is simple, Elena said. We implement proper governance. All major decisions require board approval. All contracts over a certain threshold require dual sign-off. All strategic initiatives undergo comprehensive review. We separate operational authority from ownership, and we ensure this company survives, regardless of who's running it day to day. What about Mr. Sterling's role? Another board member asked. Elena's expression didn't change. Mr. Sterling remains Chief Operating Officer. He continues managing day-to-day operations, but he no longer has unilateral authority over strategic direction. That authority rests with this board, which I chair. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him, waiting for his response, waiting to see if he'd fight or fold. He thought about fighting, about standing up, about challenging her, about making speeches about vision and leadership and everything he'd built. Then he remembered Harrison's words. Is holding on to pride worth losing everything else? He looked at Elena, really looked at her. Saw the woman who'd saved his company before he'd even married her. The woman who'd built protections while he'd built ego. The woman who'd given him every chance to choose partnership and watched him choose performance instead. I accept the proposal, Marcus said quietly. The room went silent. Elena's expression flickered, surprise maybe, or something else, but she recovered quickly. Thank you, she said formally. Are there any objections from the board? No one objected. How could they? The woman who owned 95% had just handed them actual power instead of the illusion Marcus had been selling. The vote was unanimous. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, some stopping to shake Elena's hand, others avoiding eye contact with Marcus entirely. Soon it was just the two of them in the conference room. Elena packed her portfolio. Marcus stayed seated. Elena, he said. She didn't look up. Yes? I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't change anything. But I'm sorry. Now she looked at him. Her eyes held something he couldn't quite read. I believe you. Is there any chance? No, she said gently. There isn't. We could try counseling. We could rebuild. Marcus. She said his name like she was explaining something to a child. You didn't break our marriage in that hospital. You broke it every time you dismissed my voice. Every time you made me small to make yourself feel large. Every time you took credit for what we built together. The baby was just the moment I stopped pretending those breaks could heal. I'll do better. I'm sure you will, Elena said. For the next woman. For Sienna, maybe. Or whoever comes after her. But not for me. I'm done being the foundation someone else builds their ego on. She walked to the door, stopped, turned back. You know what the saddest part is? She said. I would have shared everything with you, Gladly, joyfully. All you had to do was see me. Really see me. Not as support staff, as a partner. I did see you, Marcus said desperately. No, Elena replied. You saw someone useful. That's not the same thing. She left. Marcus sat alone in the conference room for a long time, staring at the empty chair where she'd sat, where she'd calmly dismantled his world, while offering him a way to survive it. He'd lost her. Completely. Irrevocably. And the worst part was knowing she was right. About everything. The text came 3 days after the board meeting. Unknown number. 6 words that stopped Marcus mid-step. Your wife isn't who you think. He stared at his phone. Typed back. Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who knows what she's really doing. Meet me. Bryant Park. 1 hour. Marcus should have deleted it. Should have blocked the number. Should have recognized bait when he saw it. He went anyway. The man waiting on a bench near the fountain was in his 40s, expensively dressed, holding a manila envelope like it contained state secrets. He stood when Marcus approached. Mr. Sterling, thank you for coming. Who are you? James Rothman. I used to work with your wife, before she became your wife. He held out the envelope. You should see this. Marcus didn't take it. If you have something to say, say it. Rothman smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Your wife is brilliant. Everyone knows that. What they don't know is how she got her start. The deals she made. The people she destroyed to build her reputation. I'm not interested in conspiracy theories. This isn't theory. Rothman opened the envelope, pulled out photographs, business documents, bank statements. This is proof that Elena Morrison didn't just build companies. She dismantled them, took them apart piece by piece, sold off the valuable parts, left founders with nothing. Marcus looked at the documents despite himself. Saw Elena's signature on acquisition agreements, dissolution papers, asset transfers. So what? Marcus said. That's business. That's what restructuring means. Is it? Rothman's voice hardened. She did it to me. 10 years ago. I had a software company, small but profitable. She convinced me she could help scale it. I gave her 20% equity and operational control. 6 months later, she'd stripped every valuable asset, sold them to competitors, and left me bankrupt, while she walked away with millions. Why are you telling me this? Because she's doing the same thing to you, Rothman said. Right now. That board meeting? That wasn't about governance. That was step 1 of a takeover. She's going to systematically remove your authority, devalue your position, and eventually push you out entirely. And she'll do it so cleanly, so legally, that you won't even realize you're gone until the door closes behind you. Marcus's hands clenched. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Rothman leaned closer. Has she frozen any credit lines? Blocked any expenditures? Questioned decisions you've made for years without issue? That's the pattern. First, she restricts your resources. Then, she documents your every mistake. Then she presents to the board, your board, the one she now controls, and shows them how much better the company would run without you. She wouldn't do that. She already is doing that. Rothman pressed the envelope into Marcus's hands. Read these. Look at the pattern. And ask yourself if the woman who walked away from you without a fight is the same woman who'd let you keep any piece of what she built. Rothman walked away before Marcus could respond. Left him standing there, holding an envelope full of documents that either proved his wife was a monster or proved that desperation made people see monsters everywhere. Marcus sat on the bench and read. The documents told a story. Elena, at 26, taking equity positions in struggling companies. Elena restructuring them. Elena selling assets. Founders claiming betrayal, filing lawsuits that went nowhere, walking away with nothing while Elena's net worth climbed. It looked damning. It looked calculated. It looked exactly like what was happening to him right now. Marcus's phone rang. Sienna. "Where are you?" she demanded. "You were supposed to be here an hour ago." He'd forgotten. Completely forgotten he'd promised to take her and the baby to a pediatrician appointment. "I got held up." "You're always held up. I'm doing this alone, Marcus. Everything. The feedings, the diapers, the appointments, the sleepless nights." You show up for 30 minutes, hold her while she's quiet, then disappear back into your crisis. "My marriage is falling apart." "Your marriage already fell apart," Sienna's voice cracked. "And you know what? Maybe that's exactly what you deserve, because I'm starting to think you're not actually capable of being a partner to anyone. You just take what you want and call it love." She hung up. Marcus sat there, envelope in one hand, phone in the other, feeling like he was drowning in evidence of his own failures. His phone rang again. Not Sienna this time. Daniel Park. "Marcus, we have a problem. Elena just sent a memo to all department heads. She wants a comprehensive audit of every project initiated in the last 2 years. Every contract, every expense, every decision. She's calling it operational review. I'm calling it a witch hunt." Marcus closed his eyes. "What's our exposure?" "Depends on what she's looking for. If she wants to find problems, she'll find problems. You know how many corners we cut to move fast? How many approvals we skipped because you said we needed to maintain momentum? Those were judgment calls. To you, maybe. To an auditor? They're protocol violations. And if Elena's building a case that you've been operating without proper oversight, this audit hands her everything she needs." Marcus stood up, started walking, not sure where he was going. "Can we clean anything up?" "Too late. She's already requested all documentation. If we alter anything now, it looks like we're hiding something." "We're not hiding anything, aren't we?" Daniel's voice dropped. "Marcus, I've been with this company since the beginning. I've watched Elena build systems and watched you ignore them. I've seen you sign off on things without review because you trusted your gut instead of the data." She's not making up failures. She's just finally documenting what's been happening all along. Marcus wanted to argue. Couldn't, because Daniel was right. "What do I do?" Marcus asked. "Hope she's more interested in protecting the company than punishing you," Daniel said. "Because right now, those might not be the same thing." That night, Marcus sat in his office, reading Rothman's documents and his own company's files side by side, looking for patterns, looking for proof that Elena was executing some long-planned destruction. What he found instead was consistency. Elena made hard decisions. She cut losses. She restructured failing systems. Sometimes that meant founders lost companies they'd built. Sometimes that meant employees lost jobs. Sometimes that meant pain. But the companies survived. The ones she'd restructured were still operating, still profitable, still employing people. She hadn't destroyed them. She'd saved them from people who loved their own vision more than reality. People like the ones Marcus saw in the mirror. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Did you read the files? Now you see what she really is." Rothman, still trying to sell his narrative. Marcus typed back. "I see someone who makes tough calls. That's not the same as being ruthless." Keep telling yourself that. She destroyed me. She'll destroy you too. Marcus deleted the message, deleted Rothman's number, threw the envelope in the trash. Not because he was certain Elena wasn't capable of destroying him, because he was certain he'd already destroyed himself. And blaming her was just easier than accepting responsibility. The audit took 2 weeks. Teams of accountants and lawyers went through every file, every contract, every decision Marcus had made since becoming COO. He sat through interrogations disguised as interviews, watching strangers take notes about choices he'd made in good faith that now looked reckless on paper. Elena didn't attend any of it. She remained invisible, letting her team do the work, letting the process unfold without her fingerprints directly on it. Smart. Because it meant Marcus couldn't blame her personally, couldn't accuse her of vendetta, could only watch as objective professionals documented objective facts. The report came on a Tuesday, 67 pages of findings, recommendations, and risk assessments. Daniel brought it to Marcus's office, set it on the desk like a eulogy. "How bad?" Marcus asked. "Bad." Daniel sat down heavily. They found 43 instances of expenditure approval without proper authorization, 18 contracts signed without board review, 9 projects initiated without risk assessment, 22 hiring decisions made without following protocol. Jesus, it gets worse. They're recommending immediate implementation of oversight committees, mandatory dual approval for anything over $25,000. Monthly reporting to the board, quarterly performance reviews. Basically, they're recommending you have adult supervision for every decision you make. Marcus flipped through the report. Professional language, neutral tone, devastating conclusions. When does this go to the board? Friday. Elena scheduled a special meeting. Of course she has. Marcus, Daniel leaned forward. You need to get ahead of this. You need to show contrition, accept responsibility, demonstrate you're willing to change. Because if you go into that meeting defensive, if you fight this, they'll remove you entirely. At least this way, you keep a role. A supervised role, a diminished role. A role, Daniel emphasized, which is more than you'll have if Elena decides you're too much of a liability to keep around. Marcus threw the report across the room. Papers scattered. Daniel didn't flinch. "This is humiliating," Marcus said. "Yes," Daniel agreed. "It is. And you earned every page of it." The words hit harder than the report, because they came from someone who'd been loyal, who'd supported every risky decision, who'd believed in Marcus's vision even when the numbers didn't support it. "I need to talk to her," Marcus said. "She won't take your calls." "Then I'll go to her." "You don't know where she is," Marcus smiled bitterly. "I know exactly where she is." Elena's mother still lived in Queens, in the same apartment where Elena had grown up. Marcus had been there once, years ago, for a birthday dinner. Patricia Morrison had been gracious, welcoming, but he'd felt her eyes on him all evening, measuring, assessing, finding him wanting in ways he couldn't quite identify. He understood now. She'd seen what Elena couldn't see yet, that he was a man who took more than he gave. Patricia answered the door, unsurprised to see him. "Mr. Sterling." "Mrs. Morrison, I need to see Elena." "She's not here." "Please, I know she comes here. I know you're the only person she still talks to." Patricia studied him. "What makes you think I'd tell you where my daughter is when she's clearly chosen to be away from you?" "Because I'm not here to hurt her. I'm here to accept what I did." "Little late for that." "I know." Marcus's voice broke. "I know I'm late. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I need to tell her I understand now. I need her to know I see what I couldn't see before." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "She's not here, but I can give her a message. Tell her—" Marcus stopped. What could he say that would matter? What words could undo months of dismissal, years of taking her for granted, a lifetime of believing his own importance? "Tell her I read the audit report," he said finally. "Tell her she was right about everything. Tell her I'm sorry I made her have to prove it." Patricia nodded slowly. "I'll tell her. But Marcus, my daughter doesn't need your apology. She needed your respect. Past tense. That ship sailed." She closed the door gently, not a slam, a closing, final and absolute. Marcus drove back to Manhattan in silence, went to the apartment where Sienna was waiting with their daughter, let himself in quietly. Sienna was on the couch, the baby asleep on her chest. She looked exhausted, looked at him with eyes that held no illusions anymore. "She's not taking you back," Sienna said. Not a question. "No." "So what now? You going to commit to us? Or keep chasing something you already lost?" Marcus sat down across from her, looked at his daughter's tiny face. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Any of it. Be a good father. Be a good partner. Be someone who doesn't destroy everything he touches." Sienna's expression softened slightly. "You start by being honest about what you want, about what you can actually give, about who you really are instead of who you think you should be." "I wanted to be someone important," Marcus admitted. "Someone successful. Someone people admired." "You are those things." "No," Marcus shook his head. "I was those things because Elena made me those things. I was the face she built a reputation around. And I was too stupid and too arrogant to see it." Sienna shifted the baby carefully. "So you finally figured out what the rest of us already knew." "What's that?" "That your wife was the impressive one. You were just loud." Marcus wanted to argue. Couldn't. Because even Sienna, who'd been sleeping with him for months, who'd had his child, who had every reason to build him up, could see the truth he'd been running from. "I'm going to lose everything, aren't I?" he said quietly. "Maybe," Sienna replied. "Or maybe you'll lose everything you thought mattered and figure out what actually does." She stood up, carried the baby to the bedroom, left Marcus sitting alone in an apartment that didn't feel like home, in a life that didn't feel like his, in a future that looked nothing like the one he'd imagined. The board meeting on Friday was quick, efficient, brutal. Elena presented the audit findings. No emotion, no editorializing, just facts delivered in her calm, precise voice. 43 unauthorized expenditures, 18 irregular contracts, 9 unvetted projects, 22 protocol violations. The board listened in silence. A few glanced at Marcus. Most kept their eyes on Elena. When she finished, she said simply, "I'm recommending immediate implementation of the oversight structures detailed in the report. All decisions over 25,000 require dual approval. All strategic initiatives require board review. All hiring above director level requires committee evaluation. These aren't punishments, they're protections. For the company and for everyone who depends on it." Catherine Walsh, the board member who'd questioned Elena at the last meeting, spoke first. "Mrs. Sterling, these recommendations essentially strip Mr. Sterling of autonomous decision-making power." "They strip everyone of autonomous decision-making power," Elena corrected, "including me. These structures apply to all executives. They ensure accountability. They prevent exactly the kind of unchecked behavior the audit documented." Another board member, Thomas Lee, leaned forward. "What's Mr. Sterling's role under this new structure?" "Chief Operating Officer," Elena said. "Exactly what his title has always been. He manages operations. He executes strategy. He leads teams. He just does it within a framework that prevents unilateral mistakes." "And if he refuses these terms?" Thomas asked. Elena's eyes flickered to Marcus for the first time that morning. "Then the board will need to decide if his continued employment serves the company's best interests." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was offering. Accept accountability or lose everything. Marcus stood up slowly. "I accept the terms." Elena's expression didn't change. "Thank you. Are there any objections from the board?" No one objected. "Then it's settled." Elena closed her portfolio. The new governance structure takes effect immediately. I'll be working closely with HR and legal to ensure smooth implementation. Are there any questions? Thomas raised his hand. Just one. Mrs. Sterling, what's your long-term vision for your role in this company? Elena paused. My role is to ensure this company survives beyond any individual ego or mistake. Beyond mine. Beyond Mr. Sterling's. Beyond anyone's. I built protections because I understood that businesses fail when they become extensions of personality instead of systems. I'm here to maintain those systems. Nothing more, nothing less. And your personal situation? Catherine asked carefully. How will that impact your involvement? My personal situation is separate from my professional responsibility, Elena said. I don't make business decisions based on feelings. I make them based on what's sustainable, what's ethical, and what's best for the people who depend on this company for their livelihoods. That hasn't changed and won't change. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, some stopping to speak with Elena, others avoiding both her and Marcus entirely. Soon it was just the two of them again. Elena packed her materials. Marcus stayed seated. You could have destroyed me, he said quietly. Why didn't you? Elena looked at him. Because destroying you doesn't build anything. It just creates wreckage. And I'm not interested in wreckage. I'm interested in structure that lasts. Even after what I did? What you did to our marriage is separate from what you've contributed to this company, Elena said. I can hold both truths at once. You were a terrible husband. You're a decent operations officer when you work within appropriate constraints. Those two things don't cancel each other out. I don't know how you do it, Marcus said. How you separate everything so cleanly. Practice. Elena zipped her portfolio. And clarity about what actually matters. You think I'm being cold. I think I'm being honest. The difference is, I've stopped confusing feelings with facts. Do you hate me? Elena considered the question seriously. No, I don't hate you. I don't feel much of anything about you anymore. You're a problem I've solved, a chapter I've closed, a lesson I've learned. That's all. The words should have hurt. Instead, Marcus felt something close to relief. Because hate would have meant he still mattered to her. Indifference meant he'd finally lost the power to hurt her. And if she couldn't hurt anymore, maybe she could finally be free. I'm sorry, he said, for whatever that's worth. It's worth you saying it, Elena replied. That's all. Apologies don't erase patterns. They just acknowledge them. She walked to the door, stopped, turned back one last time. Marcus, for what it's worth, I hope you figure out how to be the person you pretended to be. Because that person, the one who listened and partnered and built things with people instead of on top of them, he would have been worth keeping. But I'm done waiting for him to show up. She left. The door closed with a soft click. Marcus sat in the empty conference room, staring at the chair where his wife had sat, and calmly dismantled his ego while offering him exactly enough rope to either hang himself or climb back up. He pulled out his phone, stared at Sienna's number, then Patricia Morrison's, then Elena's, still in his favorites, even though she'd never answer. He called none of them. Instead, he called his assistant. Clear my schedule for the rest of the day. All of it? All of it. And cancel my appointments for Monday, too. Is everything okay, Mr. Sterling? No, Marcus said honestly. But it's going to be. He hung up, gathered the audit report, the governance proposals, all the documentation of his failures, took it home, spent the weekend reading every page, understanding every mistake, accepting every consequence. On Monday morning, he showed up to the office at 7 a.m., met with every department head individually, said the same thing to each of them. I've been making decisions without proper consultation. That changes now. I need your input. I need your expertise. I need you to tell me when I'm wrong, not just when I want to hear I'm right." Some looked skeptical. Some looked relieved. All of them looked surprised. By Wednesday, word had spread. Sterling's changed. Sterling's actually listening. Sterling's not the same guy who cut people off in meetings. By Friday, Marcus had implemented 3 suggestions from junior staff members he'd ignored for months, had reversed 2 decisions he'd made unilaterally, had apologized to a project manager he'd blamed publicly for a failure that was actually his fault. It felt humiliating. It felt necessary. It felt like the beginning of becoming someone who deserved respect instead of demanding it. He didn't tell Elena, didn't try to prove anything to her. Did it because Daniel had been right, because Patricia had been right, because even Sienna had been right. He'd been loud. Now he was trying to be substantial. And maybe, somewhere in the wreckage of everything he'd destroyed, he'd find something worth building that wasn't just performance. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He almost deleted it, assuming it was Rothman again, trying to sell his conspiracy theories. But the message was different. The audit was step 1. She's not done. Watch your back. Marcus stared at it, felt that old paranoia creep back in. The suspicion that Elena wasn't restructuring, but destroying. That her calm wasn't wisdom, but calculation. Then he deleted the message without responding. Because whoever was sending these warnings didn't understand something fundamental. Elena didn't need to destroy him. He'd already done that himself. All she was doing was making sure the pieces didn't take the whole company down when they fell. And if that was revenge, it was the kindest form he could have hoped for. 2 months after the governance restructuring, Marcus sat across from Sienna in the pediatrician's waiting room, watching their daughter sleep in her carrier. The silence between them had weight now. History. The accumulated burden of 2 people who'd created a life together without ever building a foundation. "She looks like you," Sienna said quietly. "She has your mouth," Marcus replied. Sienna smiled sadly. "We're really good at small talk now. Remember when we couldn't stop talking?" Marcus remembered. Remembered how easy it had been, how exciting. How Sienna had made him feel like the man he wanted to be instead of the man he was. But that excitement had been built on fantasy, on secrets, on the temporary high of being wanted without being known. "I'm filing the divorce papers next week," Marcus said. Sienna looked at him sharply. "Elena finally agreed?" "She initiated them. Her lawyer sent the documents yesterday. No contest, clean separation. She's not asking for anything." "Nothing?" "Nothing. She keeps her 95%, I keep my 5% and my salary. She's not touching the penthouse or my personal accounts. She's just walking away." Sienna leaned back. "That doesn't sound like the ruthless corporate shark everyone's been warning you about." Marcus thought about Rothman's envelope, about the anonymous messages, about everyone who tried to convince him Elena was systematically destroying him. She was never ruthless. She was just clear about boundaries. "I mistook clarity for cruelty because I've gotten so used to getting my way." "So what happens now?" Sienna asked. "With us?" Marcus looked at his daughter, felt that complicated knot of love and responsibility and fear. "I want to be her father, a real one, not a visitor who shows up when it's convenient." "And with me?" He met Sienna's eyes. "I want to be honest with you. I don't love you the way you deserve to be loved. I was attracted to you. I cared about you. But I was mostly attracted to how you made me feel about myself. That's not fair to you. It's not enough to build a life on." Sienna's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I know. I've known for a while. I just kept hoping you'd change, that you'd become the man you pretended to be when we were sneaking around." "That man was a fantasy." "I know," Sienna whispered. But I wanted him to be real so badly. I convinced myself he was. The nurse called their daughter's name. They stood together, this man and woman bound by biology and mistake, and a child who deserved better than two parents who'd never actually chosen each other beyond a moment of weakness. After the appointment, Marcus drove Sienna and the baby back to the apartment, helped carry the diaper bag upstairs, stood awkwardly in the doorway, not quite part of this domestic scene, not quite separate from it. "I'm going to move to Boston," Sienna said suddenly. Marcus's chest tightened. "What?" "My sister lives there. She has kids, support, space. New York is expensive, and I'm alone. And I can't do this by myself anymore." "You're not alone. I'm here." "You're here when you remember to be here," Sienna corrected gently. "And I'm not blaming you. Not entirely. But I need stability. She needs stability. And we're not going to find it, waiting for you to figure out how to be present." "When?" "End of the month. I've already found an apartment. Close to my sister's place. Good schools nearby for when she's older." Marcus felt panic rising. "I'll miss everything. Her first steps, her first words, everything. Then you'll drive up on weekends. You'll video call. You'll be involved in the ways you can actually sustain, instead of promising things you can't deliver." Sienna's voice was firm now, not angry, just certain. "I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to survive. And right now, survival means building a life that doesn't depend on you being different than you are." She was right. Marcus knew she was right. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. "I'll set up a better support system," he said. "More than we agreed on. Whatever you need." "I need you to be realistic about what you can give," Sienna replied. "Money's not the issue. Presence is. And if you can't give that consistently, then at least don't make promises that make it harder when you disappear." Marcus left feeling hollowed out, drove aimlessly for an hour, found himself outside Elena's mother's apartment in Queens, without consciously deciding to go there. He sat in this car, phone in hand, trying to decide if showing up unannounced was brave or pathetic. Before he could choose, Patricia Morrison appeared on the sidewalk, grocery bags in both hands. She saw him immediately. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then she walked to his car, set down her bags, and waited. Marcus got out. "Mrs. Morrison, you look terrible," she said bluntly. "I feel terrible." "Good, you should." She picked up her bags. "You going to help me carry these or just stand there looking pitiful?" He grabbed the heavier bags, followed her up 3 flights of stairs to the apartment where Elena had learned that love without respect was just slow-motion loss. Patricia's apartment was exactly as he remembered it. Small, clean, filled with photographs of Elena at every age, evidence of a mother's pride in a daughter who'd built something from nothing. "Sit," Patricia commanded, unpacking groceries. "You want coffee?" "No, thank you." "You're going to drink it anyway. You look like you haven't slept in weeks." She made coffee while Marcus sat at the kitchen table, where Elena had done homework as a child, where she'd learned to calculate costs and manage budgets, and understand that financial security was the only real safety. Patricia set a mug in front of him, sat down across from him, waited. "I don't know why I'm here," Marcus admitted. "Yes, you do. You're here because my daughter won't talk to you, and you're hoping I'll give you information, or access, or absolution." "I'm not here for absolution." "Then what?" Marcus wrapped his hands around the mug. "I want to understand how she does it, how she walks away from 10 years without looking back, how she's so calm about everything falling apart." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "You think she's calm?" "She seems calm." "She seems controlled. That's not the same thing." Patricia sipped her coffee. "My daughter learned early that showing pain is dangerous. Her father left without warning. No explanation, no apology. Just gone. She asked me why for months, asked what she'd done wrong, asked if he stopped loving her because she wasn't good enough. Marcus's throat tightened. What did you tell her? The truth, that his leaving had nothing to do with her and everything to do with him. That people who love you don't make you small to make themselves feel big. That the only person you can absolutely depend on is yourself. Patricia met his eyes. She learned those lessons at 6 years old. You think she's going to forget them at 36 just because a man she loved proved her right? She told me she doesn't feel anything about me anymore. And you want to know if that's true? Patricia stood up, refilled both mugs, even though his was still half full. It's true. Elena doesn't lie about what she feels. When she stops feeling, she stops. There's no gray area with her. You're either in or you're out. And Marcus, you walked yourself out. I know. Do you? Patricia sat back down. Because you're here, in my kitchen, looking for some way to undo what's done. That's not acceptance. That's denial with extra steps. Marcus stared into his coffee. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes, you did. Can I ask you something? Should I stop trying? Should I just sign the papers and move on? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. What are you actually asking me? I'm asking if there's any chance she'd ever forgive me. She already has forgiven you, Patricia said. That's not the same as taking you back. Elena doesn't hold grudges. She just doesn't repeat patterns that hurt her. You hurt her. Therefore, you're a pattern she won't repeat. That's it? That's the end? That's reality. Patricia's voice was gentle now, almost kind. You want me to give you hope because you're hurting. But hope that keeps you stuck isn't kindness. It's cruelty. My daughter has moved on. You need to do the same. Marcus left Patricia's apartment feeling worse than when he'd arrived. Drove back to Manhattan. Went to the office, even though it was Saturday, even though the building was mostly empty, because being alone with his thoughts felt unbearable. He found Elena in her office. She looked up, surprised. What are you doing here? She asked. Working, same as you. On a Saturday? Turns out I don't have much else to do. Marcus leaned against the doorframe. Can I ask you something? Elena closed her laptop. If I say no, you'll ask anyway. Fair. Marcus stepped into her office. Did you ever love me? Really love me? Elena studied him. Why does it matter now? Because I'm trying to understand if what we had was real or if I imagined the whole thing. It was real, Elena said quietly. For a while, I loved you very much. I loved your ambition, your vision, the way you made big ideas feel possible. I loved who we were together when we were actually together. What changed? You stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a function. Wife, support system, foundation, something to stand on instead of stand with. She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. I kept a journal during our marriage, not consistently, just when I needed to process something. I read it last week. Want to know what I found? Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. The first 2 years, every entry is about us. What we built together, what we dreamed about, what we laughed about. Years 3 and 4, the entries shift. More about work. More about feeling invisible. More about convincing myself you were just stressed, just distracted, just temporarily not seeing me. Years 5 through 8, the entries stop being about us entirely. They're about me, what I wanted, what I'd sacrificed, what I wasn't sure I recognized anymore when I looked in the mirror. Elena, I'm not telling you this to hurt you. she continued. "I'm telling you because you asked if it was real. It was real. And then it wasn't. And I tried to tell you, tried to show you, tried to fight for us. But you were too busy performing success to notice the person holding the stage steady was crumbling." "I notice now." "Now doesn't matter," Elena said simply. "Now is too late. Now is after you had a child with someone else. Now is after you spent years treating me like furniture. Now is you wanting credit for finally seeing what you should have seen all along." "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing." Elena stood up. "I don't want you to say anything. I want you to take the lesson, learn it. Be better for the next woman. Be better for your daughter. Be better for yourself. But don't ask me to teach you how to be the person you should have been for me. I'm not your guide anymore. I'm just the person making sure the business we built doesn't collapse because you're learning empathy 10 years too late." She gathered her laptop and files, walked to the door, stopped beside him. "Sign the divorce papers, Marcus. Let both of us move forward." She left. Marcus stood alone in her office, surrounded by evidence of her competence, her organization, her clarity. The office looked nothing like his. No ego walls covered in magazine features. No photographs of him shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. Just clean surfaces, organized files, and a calendar marked with meetings and deadlines and responsibilities she handled without needing applause. His phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. "Emergency. Conference room. Now." Marcus ran, found Daniel, Robert Chen, and 3 board members already there. Everyone looked tense. "What happened?" Marcus asked. "We got a call from Rothman Industries," Robert said. "They're claiming we violated a non-compete clause in a contract signed 5 years ago. They're threatening to sue for breach and damages." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What contract?" Robert slid papers across the table. Marcus scanned them, memory flooding back. A small acquisition early in their expansion. Elena had handled most of it. He'd signed the final documents without reading them carefully. "This is ridiculous," Marcus said. "We didn't violate anything." "Didn't we?" Daniel pulled up a presentation on the screen. "Look at our Chicago project. Half the technology is derivative of systems Rothman developed. We hired 3 of their engineers. We're essentially competing directly with them, using their own intellectual property." "Elena cleared all this," Marcus insisted. "She reviewed every hiring decision, every technology integration. She wouldn't have approved anything that violated our agreements." "Elena cleared it under the old governance model," Robert said carefully, "when she had full authority and could make judgment calls. But if this goes to court, they're not going to care about internal authority. They're going to care about what the contract says." Marcus reread the contract, saw the clause. Broad language about competitive technologies, restrictions on hiring, requirements for disclosure and approval that he wasn't sure they'd followed. "How much are they asking for?" he asked quietly. $50 million in damages. Plus, they want us to shut down the Chicago project entirely." The room spun. $50 million would cripple them. Shutting down Chicago would mean layoffs, broken commitments to clients, reputation damage that would take years to recover from. "This is Rothman," Marcus said suddenly. "The man from Bryant Park. He's doing this because Elena restructured his company years ago. This isn't about contracts. This is revenge." "Revenge with legal standing," Robert corrected. "Judge isn't going to care about his motives if his contract claims are valid." "We need Elena," Catherine Walsh said. Everyone looked at her. She shrugged. "She negotiated this contract. She structured our Chicago operations. She's the only one who'll know if we actually violated the terms or if Rothman's reaching." "She already told us she's stepping back from operations," Thomas Lee said. "Then we convince her to step back in," Catherine replied. Because if we lose this lawsuit, there won't be operations to step back from. Marcus pulled out his phone, called Elena. She didn't answer. Called again, voicemail. Sent a text. Emergency. Rothman Industries threatening lawsuit. Need your help immediately. The 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, send me the complaint. I'll review it tonight. Relief flooded through Marcus. She'll look at it. Will she fix it? Daniel asked. That, Marcus realized, was a very different question. Elena's response came at 3 a.m. Marcus was still at the office, had been reading and rereading the contract for 8 hours straight, trying to find loopholes that didn't exist. The email was brief. Conference room, 8 a.m. Bring everyone who worked on Chicago project. And Marcus, bring the original acquisition files from 5 years ago. All of them. At 7:55, Marcus stood outside the conference room with Daniel, Robert, and the 4 executives who'd managed the Chicago operations. Everyone looked nervous. No one wanted to be the person who'd miss something that could cost the company $50 million. Elena arrived at exactly 8. She wore a dark gray suit, carried 2 briefcases, looked like she hadn't slept, but moved with absolute focus. Sit, she said. Everyone sat. She connected her laptop to the screen, pulled up the Rothman contract. I've reviewed the complaint. It's weak, but not frivolous. They're claiming we violated clauses 17, 23, and 31. Let's go through each one. For the next 3 hours, Elena dissected the contract with surgical precision, showed how Clause 17's language was vague enough to allow interpretation, demonstrated that Clause 23 had been modified in a subsequent addendum Rothman's lawyers apparently missed, proved that Clause 31 didn't apply because the engineers they'd hired had left Rothman before the non-compete window began. They have no case, she concluded, but they're counting on us not having the documentation to prove it. That's why I need those original files. Marcus slid the boxes across the table. Everything from the acquisition. Elena opened them methodically, pulled out contracts, communications, technical specifications, hiring records. Everything organized exactly how she'd left it 5 years ago. This, she held up a document, is the addendum modifying Clause 23. It's signed by their CEO. They're either pretending it doesn't exist, or they genuinely lost track of it. Either way, it destroys their claim. Can we countersue? Daniel asked. We can, but it's expensive and time-consuming, and ultimately benefits no one except lawyers. I suggest we send this documentation to Rothman's counsel with a letter explaining that pursuing this lawsuit would result in sanctions for filing a frivolous claim. Give them a week to withdraw. They will. Robert leaned back. You figured this out in one night? I figured this out 5 years ago, Elena corrected. I documented everything precisely because I knew people like Rothman hold grudges. I just had to remember where I filed it. Marcus stared at her. You saved the company. I protected the company, Elena said. 5 years ago, when I built systems you thought were paranoid. Tonight, I just activated them. She packed her laptop. I'll draft the response letter. Robert, you'll send it. Daniel, compile every communication with any former Rothman employee. We need to prove clean separation. Marcus, stop signing things you don't read. This could have been avoided if you'd bothered to understand the agreements you were approving. She left before anyone could respond. The room sat in stunned silence. She's terrifying, one of the Chicago executives whispered. She's brilliant, Catherine corrected. There's a difference. Marcus chased Elena into the parking garage. Wait! She stopped, turned. What? Thank you. For helping us. For saving the company. For not letting your personal feelings compromise your professional integrity. Elena's expression was unreadable. I didn't do it for you. I did it for the 300 people who work here and depend on this company not collapsing because you made enemies and didn't read contracts. Still, thank you. Sign the divorce papers, Marcus. She opened her car door. That's how you thank me? By letting me be done with this chapter cleanly. Can I ask one more thing? She sighed. What? Do you regret it? Marrying me? Building this company? Any of it? Elena was quiet for a moment. I regret that you made me choose between my dignity and my partnership. I regret that I waited so long to choose myself. But I don't regret what we built. And I don't regret learning exactly how strong I am when I'm not making myself small for someone else's comfort. She got in her car, drove away. Left Marcus standing in the concrete garage, surrounded by luxury vehicles and dim lighting and the echo of his own mistakes. That night, he called Sienna. You're right to move to Boston. What? You need to build a life that doesn't depend on me being different. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to figure out who I actually am when I'm not performing for an audience. Marcus, are you okay? No, he admitted. But I'm going to be. Eventually. After he hung up, Marcus pulled out the divorce papers Elena's lawyers had sent, read every page, every clause, every term. She was giving him more than he deserved, asking for nothing but freedom, offering him a clean exit from a marriage he'd destroyed. He signed them, all of them. Then he scanned them and emailed them to her lawyers before he could second-guess himself. His phone buzzed immediately. Elena. Just 3 words. Thank you. Sincerely. Marcus typed and deleted 5 different responses. Finally sent, You deserved better. I'm sorry, I wasn't it. The 3 dots appeared, stayed for a long time. Then, We both deserved better. Good luck, Marcus. It felt like the actual ending. Not angry, not bitter, just finished. Marcus sat alone in his apartment, legally separated, professionally diminished, personally unmoored from everything he'd thought defined him. And for the first time in months, he felt something unexpected. Not peace, not happiness, but possibility. The possibility that he could become someone different, someone better. Someone who didn't need to be the loudest person in the room to matter. It was a strange feeling, uncomfortable, uncertain, but real. More real than anything he'd felt in years. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, Marcus stood in the conference room presenting quarterly results to the board. Not as CEO, not as the visionary everyone had once celebrated, as Chief Operating Officer, working within constraints, subject to oversight, accountable to people who no longer took his word as gospel. Operating costs are down 8%, he said, clicking to the next slide. We've implemented the efficiency measures the Oversight Committee recommended. 3 projects came in under budget. 2 exceeded performance targets. Elena sat at the far end of the table, taking notes. She rarely spoke during these meetings anymore, unless asked directly. Just listened, observed, let the systems do the work she designed them to do. Questions? Marcus asked. Thomas Lee raised his hand. The Chicago project. 6 months ago, we were facing a $50 million lawsuit. Now it's one of our most profitable operations. Walk us through that turnaround. Marcus met Elena's eyes briefly. She nodded, barely perceptible. We restructured our vendor relationships, Marcus said. Eliminated redundant processes. Mrs. Sterling identified cost overruns I'd missed. We implemented her recommendations. The project stabilized within 60 days. Mrs. Sterling, Catherine Walsh said, turning to Elena, your analysis saved this project. Why aren't you presenting these results? Elena looked up from her notes. Because operational execution isn't my role anymore. I provide oversight, Mr. Sterling implements. That's the division of labor we established. It's working. It's working remarkably well, Catherine agreed. Profitability is up. Employee satisfaction surveys are the highest they've been in 3 years. Client retention is at 94%. Whatever you're both doing, keep doing it. After the meeting, Marcus gathered his materials. Elena did the same. They moved around each other with practiced distance, professional but not warm, functional but not friendly. Good presentation, Elena said. Good recommendations, Marcus replied. That was it. The extent of their interaction. Brief, courteous, empty of everything that had once filled the space between them. Marcus went back to his office, found Sienna waiting outside. He stopped. What are you doing here? Visiting, Sienna said. She looked different, healthier, less exhausted. I was in the city for meetings. Thought I'd surprise you. How's Boston? Good. Really good, actually. My sister's been amazing. The baby's thriving. I got a job. Marcus smiled. Doing what? Marketing for a nonprofit. Part-time so I can still be home with her. But it's mine. My work. My identity beyond just being a mother. Sienna shifted her purse. Can we talk? Somewhere private? They went to a coffee shop 2 blocks away, sat across from each other with lattes neither of them wanted, trying to figure out how 2 people who'd created life together had become strangers. She's walking now, Sienna said, pulling out her phone to show videos. Started last week. Just stood up and took off like she'd been planning it for months. Marcus watched his daughter toddle across a living room he'd never seen, in a life he wasn't part of, surrounded by people who saw her every day, while he saw her twice a month. She looks happy, he said. She is happy. We both are. That's actually why I'm here. Sienna put her phone away. I met someone. Marcus's chest tightened. Oh. His name is David. He works at MIT. He's kind. He's patient. He's good with her. And he wants to be serious about us. But he won't move forward until he knows where things stand with you. Where things stand? Are you going to fight me on this? Sienna asked bluntly. On me building a life with someone who's actually present? Who wants to be a partner instead of a visitor? Marcus thought about it. Really thought. About ego and possession, and what his daughter actually needed versus what his pride demanded. I'm not going to fight you, he said. If he makes you happy, if he's good to her, then I'm grateful you found him. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really. I want her to see what healthy partnership looks like. I want her to grow up with people who choose each other every day instead of people who stay together out of obligation or guilt. You've changed, Sienna said softly. You sound different. You even look different. I am different. I'm trying to be different. Marcus stirred his coffee. I'm in therapy. Started 3 months ago, twice a week. What do you talk about? Everything. My marriage, my failures, why I needed validation more than I needed connection, why I confused being impressive with being worthy. He smiled bitterly. Turns out I have a lot of work to do. Don't we all? But I'm actually doing it, not performing growth, not pretending change, actually sitting with uncomfortable truths about who I've been and who I want to become. Sienna reached across the table, squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you. Don't be. Not yet. Ask me again in a year if I've sustained it. Fair. She pulled back. I should go. My train's in an hour. They stood, hugged briefly. Marcus watched her leave, this woman who'd briefly been his escape and had become his teacher in ways neither of them expected. Back at the office, Marcus found Daniel waiting. We need to talk about the Philadelphia expansion, Daniel said. What about it? It's moving too fast. The numbers look good on paper, but the risk assessment isn't complete. The oversight committee wants to slow down. You need to approve the delay. 2 years ago, Marcus would have fought, would have insisted speed mattered more than caution, would have overruled the committee and pushed forward because momentum felt more important than prudence. Approved, Marcus said. Send me the revised timeline. I'll present it at the next board meeting. Daniel stared. Just like that? Just like that. They're right. I was rushing. Better to delay than to screw up. After Daniel left, Marcus sat alone in his office, pulled out his journal, the one his therapist had suggested he keep, started writing. Today I chose process over ego. It felt strange, almost like losing. But I think that's the point. I've spent so long equating winning with being right that I forgot sometimes losing an argument means gaining wisdom. Elena tried to teach me this for years. I wasn't ready to learn. Maybe I'm ready now. Maybe. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Sterling, this is Rachel Kim, Dr. Kim. I treated your wife. I'm reaching out because Elena asked me to share something with you. Marcus's heart raced. He typed back. Is she okay? She's fine, but she's making plans. Wanted you to know through official channels rather than gossip. She's launching a foundation for women in business. She'll be stepping back from day-to-day operations at Sterling Infrastructure to focus on it full-time. The news hit harder than Marcus expected. Elena leaving. Not just their marriage, the company, everything they built. He called the number. Dr. Kim answered. When? Marcus asked. 6 months. She's already identified her replacement. Someone she's been mentoring for the past year. The board will vote on it next month. She didn't tell me. She said she didn't need to tell you, that it was a professional decision, and you'd be informed through proper channels. Dr. Kim paused. But I thought you deserved a heads up, person to person. Thank you. Marcus's voice was rough. Is she happy? Can you tell me that at least? She's purposeful, Dr. Kim said carefully. I don't know if that's the same as happy, but she's clear. And for Elena, clarity might be more valuable than happiness. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Elena launching a foundation, creating something new, moving forward while he was still trying to repair what he'd broken. At 2 a.m., he did something stupid. Drove to her brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Stood outside, looking up at lit windows, trying to decide if showing up unannounced was romantic or restraining order territory. The door opened. Elena stood there in pajama pants and a Columbia sweatshirt, looking less polished than he'd ever seen her. More human. I saw you on the security camera, she said. Either come in or leave, but stop lurking on my sidewalk. Marcus climbed the steps, stopped at the door. I heard about the foundation. Good. The announcement goes public next week. You're leaving the company. I'm transitioning my role. It's not the same thing. Elena, don't. She held up her hand. Don't make this dramatic. This is a business decision. The company is stable. It has proper governance. It doesn't need me anymore. So I'm building something that does need me. Can I ask what the foundation will do? Elena stepped aside. Let him enter. Led him to a study filled with papers, plans, organizational charts. Women build businesses, she said, gesturing to the documents. They build them from scratch, with limited resources and maximum risk. Then men come in with capital and confidence and take credit for scaling what women started. I'm creating a structure that prevents that. Legal frameworks, ownership protections, mentorship programs that teach women to build power they can't lose. Marcus looked at the plans, saw Elena's precision, her clarity, her determination to prevent other women from experiencing what she'd experienced. "This is because of me," he said quietly. "This is because of patterns I've seen for years. You were just the final confirmation." Elena sat down at her desk. "Marcus, why are you here? At 2 a.m., standing outside my house?" "I don't know. I heard you were leaving, and I panicked." "Why?" "Because you're the only person who's ever seen me clearly, even when I was at my worst, especially then. And the idea of you being gone completely, of not even having you at the end of a conference table, it makes me realize how much I still depend on your presence." Elena's expression softened slightly. "You need to learn to depend on yourself." "I'm trying. I'm in therapy. I'm doing the work. I'm becoming someone different." "Good. Do it for yourself, not for me." "What if I want to do it for both?" Elena shook her head. "That's not how this works. You don't get to use me as motivation for your personal growth. You don't get to make your evolution about winning me back." "I'm not trying to win you back." "Aren't you?" Marcus sat down across from her. "Okay, maybe part of me is. Maybe part of me will always wonder what if. What if I'd listened earlier? What if I'd chosen partnership over performance? What if I'd seen you while I still had the chance?" "Those are questions for your therapist, not for me." "I know. I know you've moved on. I know there's no going back. I know I destroyed something irreplaceable." Marcus leaned forward. "But can I ask one thing? One honest thing?" "What?" "Do you ever miss it? What we had? Before I ruined it?" Elena was quiet for a long time. "I miss who I thought we were. I miss believing partnership was possible. I miss the version of you that listened. But Marcus, that version existed mostly in my hope. The real you was always there. I just spent years making excuses for why you weren't showing up. I'm showing up now. Now doesn't undo then. I know. But maybe now matters anyway. Maybe who I'm becoming matters, even if it doesn't change what happened." Elena studied him. "You know what I think? I think you're doing the work. I think you're genuinely trying to change, and I'm proud of you for that. But I'm also done being the measuring stick for your growth. I'm done being the prize you chase to prove you've evolved." "Then what do I chase?" "Nothing. You become someone who doesn't need to chase, someone who's enough on his own." She stood up. "It's late. You should go." Marcus stood too. "Can I ask one more thing?" Elena sighed. "What?" "The foundation. Can I donate to it? Support it somehow?" "Write a check if you want, but don't expect credit. Don't expect access. Don't expect it to be a back door into my life." "I won't. I just want to support something you're building, something important." Elena walked him to the door. They stood in the doorway, closer than they'd been in months, the weight of their history pressing down. "Goodbye, Marcus," Elena said gently. "This feels final." "It is final. That's the point." Marcus nodded, walked down the steps, got in his car, looked back once. Elena was already closing the door. 3 months later, Marcus sat in a different therapist's office. Not his usual therapist. A couples counselor Sienna had asked him to meet with before David formally proposed to her. "I want to make sure we're on the same page," Sienna had said. "About co-parenting, about boundaries, about how this all works when I marry someone else." The counselor, Dr. Williams, sat across from them. Sienna's explained the situation. "Marcus, how do you feel about her getting remarried?" "Honestly," Marcus took a breath, "I'm relieved. Not because I don't care. Because I want her to be happy in ways I couldn't make her happy. I want my daughter to see healthy love modeled. And I'm grateful David wants to be present in ways I wasn't capable of being. Sienna's eyes widened. You mean that? I do. I'm not the same person who got you pregnant while married to someone else. I'm not trying to be noble. I'm trying to be honest. I wasn't ready to be the partner or father you both deserved. David is. That matters more than my ego. Dr. Williams leaned forward. That's significant growth, Marcus. How did you get here? Consequences, therapy, losing everything and having to decide who I wanted to be in the wreckage. Marcus looked at Sienna. I'm sorry I put you through what I put you through. You deserved better from the beginning. We both made choices, Sienna said. I'm not innocent in this. Maybe not, but I was the married one. I had more to lose, and I risked it anyway, because I was selfish and broken and using you to fix things only I could fix in myself. They talked for 2 hours, established boundaries, created co-parenting agreements, discussed holidays and visits, and how to introduce David to their daughter as a permanent presence. Walking out of the office, Sienna hugged Marcus tight. I forgive you completely for what that's worth. It's worth everything, Marcus said. Thank you. Be happy, Marcus. Figure out who you are. Find someone who sees that person. I'm working on it. Back at Sterling Infrastructure, the board met to vote on Elena's replacement. Marcus sat in his usual seat, watching Elena present her recommendation. Ava Johnson has worked with me for 18 months, Elena said, projecting Ava's credentials on the screen. She understands corporate governance. She's meticulous about structure. She's brilliant at risk assessment. And she's ready. She's 29, one board member said skeptically. That's very young for this level of responsibility. I was 26 when I structured this company, Elena replied. Age isn't a proxy for competence. Ava has proven herself. I trust her. That should matter. The board voted. Unanimous approval. Ava Johnson became Elena's successor. Elena officially transitioned to board chair, non-executive, focused entirely on her foundation. At the celebration dinner, Marcus approached Elena. Congratulations on the foundation, on Ava, on everything. That respect is just slow motion loss. That partnership requires seeing the other person clearly, not just how they make you feel about yourself. He'd learned that walking away sometimes takes more courage than staying. That choosing yourself isn't selfish when staying means erasing yourself. Most importantly, he'd learned that some women don't need to destroy you to be free of you. They just need to stop holding up the illusion that you're holding everything together. Elena had walked away from betrayal with her head high and her power intact. Not because she was ruthless, because she'd prepared for the possibility that love might not be enough. Because she'd built protections that outlasted promises. Because she'd understood something fundamental that Marcus had to learn the hard way. The person who controls the foundation controls everything built upon it. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone stand on you while pretending you're standing together. Marcus pulled into his driveway, looked at the modest house he'd bought after selling the penthouse, the life he'd built that was smaller but more honest, the future that looked nothing like the one he'd imagined, but felt more real than anything he'd performed. He'd lost his wife, lost his empire, lost the image of himself as the brilliant visionary everyone celebrated. But he'd gained something more valuable. He'd gained humility. Accountability, the ability to see his own flaws without performing redemption for an audience, the capacity to support causes larger than his ego, the wisdom to understand that some of life's most important lessons come wrapped in the consequences of your own worst choices. And somewhere across the city, Elena Morrison Chen was building futures for women who refused to make themselves small. Was creating structures that protected partnership instead of punishing it. Was living proof that walking away from what diminishes you isn't weakness. It's the moment you finally stand on ground that belongs entirely to you. And that ground, built on preparation and boundaries, and the courage to choose yourself, that ground is unshakable.